What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and in order to keep from driving myself insane by making the same kind of video every single day, I'm going to try something new, and I have no clue what direction this is going to take. But what I do want to talk about right now is how Deadpool was a member of the X-Men. A little bit of backstory here. So there was this group called the Illuminati, and the Illuminati were like Charles Xavier and Doctor Strange and Iron Man and like Reed Richards, and their goal was to basically keep the planet protected. They were like, we're going to operate behind the scenes, and we're going to keep the Earth protected, and we're going to make sure that nobody attacks it. And one of the first things they did is they went off-world to a planet that belonged to a race called the Skrulls. And the Skrulls could basically shapeshift. Keep that in the back of your mind because that's going to be important. But the Skrulls could shapeshift, and the Illuminati were like, hey, look, Skrulls, you guys have been messing with our race for a while. You've been showing up on Earth when we don't want you to. All your little wars, all that kind of stuff. Keep that to yourselves. Don't show up on our planet. And the Skrulls are like, you know what? You're coming with us. So they kidnap the Illuminati. They basically start experimenting on them. They analyze their bodies, and then they send them back to Earth with no idea of what happened. So fast forward. There's Marvel's Civil War, and I've got a 5-hour series on it if you haven't seen Civil War. It's a great, big, huge, long event, but basically it was Captain America on the side of freedom, Iron Man on the side of security, and they were split by the Superhuman Registration Act, and they basically waged war against one another for a while, and then Iron Man's team won. Done and done. Iron Man becomes a director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he's basically in charge of the United States national security. Well, come to find out, throughout the entire event of Civil War, the Skrulls had secretly been replacing people and superheroes with Skrull replicants. That took place in an event called Secret Invasion. And so once the Secret Invasion event comes to an end, and once the world figures out what was going on, they get rid of Tony Stark. Well, during Secret Invasion, Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, the villain of Spider-Man, had literally shot and killed the Skrull Queen. And so the world was like, oh my god, Norman Osborn is amazing. He literally saved humanity. And so for reasons that I don't understand, they make Norman Osborn the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Well, Norman Osborn being a bad guy is like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do bad guy stuff. And so he basically starts implementing these little dictatorial plans and trying to make himself absolute ruler of the United States and so on. Well, the X-Men are like, nope, we're not having any part of that. And so they leave the continental United States and they move to an island off the coast of San Francisco. And the reason why is because if they're not part of the continental United States, Norman Osborn cannot directly affect them. He has to use these crappy means. Well, during this time, this guy named Ellis Kincaid is just making these absolutely ridiculous claims. He's like, the X-Men are evil and the X-Men are bad, and they're bad because they moved off the coast of San Francisco and they took my daughter with them because she's an X-Man and I can't see her, I'm not allowed to talk to her, so on and so forth. And the X-Men are like, oh my god, this is a major issue. Well, at the same time that all this is happening, Deadpool is like, I'm tired of being a hero for hire. I'm tired of doing contracts. I want to have something like meaningful. I want to do something meaningful with my life. And so Deadpool is watching this broadcast by Cyclops where they're like, we're the X-Men and you guys didn't want us in the United States anymore and we're tired of everything that's going on, so we're literally just leaving. And Deadpool's like, man, like, Cyclops wants me to be an X-Man. Does it make any sense? Nope, but it's Deadpool, don't ask questions. So Deadpool goes to Cyclops and he's like, hey man, can I be an X-Man? And Cyclops is like, absolutely not. No way you're gonna be an X-Man. And Deadpool's like, oh, okay. And so he's sad and then he walks away. Cue the sad music from the Incredible Hulk. And so what ends up happening is Wolverine is like, look Cyclops, we've been friends for a long time, even though I've always wanted to get with Jean Grey, but I couldn't because you were with her, whatever. That's old news because Jean Grey's long since been dead. He's like, you messed up. And Cyclops is like, how? And he was like, sometimes it's better to keep your enemies close and your friends closer, something along those lines, I don't know. Have somebody keep an eye on Deadpool. And Cyclops is like, okay, not a bad idea. So they go to Domino and they're like, hey Domino, you used to bang Cable back in the day, right? And she's like, yeah. And they're like, you were friends with Deadpool back in the day, right? And she's like, well, not really friends, but I knew him. And they're like, okay, you need to go keep an eye on Deadpool. And she's like, why me? And they were like, because all the stuff we just said. And so she's like, okay, fine. So she goes to see Deadpool and Deadpool's like camping out because he assumes he's an X-Man now, even though he was told that he wasn't. And he's looking at this guy, Ellis Kincaid. Most likely he's going to assassinate him, not really sure. But he hears Domino coming and he turns around and he was like, you came here to kill me. And she's like, no, I didn't. And he was like, yeah, Cyclops sent you here to kill me. And she's like, no way, I just came here to tell you that you can be part of the X-Men. And he's like, take some steps back. And she's like, okay. And he's like, take some more steps back. And she's like, okay. And then he shoots the glass out from under her. Come to find out, earlier in the day, Deadpool had made like 372,000 pancakes and she landed on them. And so while she's covered in pancake syrup, her and Deadpool are eating the pancakes. And so he's like, I get to be an X-Man? And she's like, yep. And he's like, absolutely awesome. That's so cool. But he's like, only under one condition. She's like, what's that? And he was like, I want to wear my own uniform. And so like, while Domino's telling Cyclops all this stuff, Cyclops is like, we don't have an X-Man suit. And she was like, no, Deadpool made his own X-Man suit. It's yellow and black, and it looks amazing because it says Deadpool on the back. And so Cyclops is like, okay, whatever. And so Deadpool becomes one of the X-Men. Well, the first thing he does is create an absolute public relations nightmare by literally trying to stage an assassination on Ellis Kincaid on live TV while he's in the middle of an interview. And Cyclops is like, oh my God, we got to do something about this. And so they show up and they're like, Deadpool, you got to stop this. And Deadpool's like, no way, I'm an X-Man. This is what we do. And Cyclops is like, we do not assassinate people. We're not assassins. That's not what we do. We help people and we try to stave off humanity hating us, but we also give like mutants a home. And Deadpool's like, man, that sucks. And so he was like, I'm not going to surrender. That's what you guys are expecting. No way that's going to happen. And so Deadpool ends up getting in a battle with like Colossus, like he spits blood in his face, and he ends up getting into a battle with Cyclops, and he's battling all the X-Men, and all hell's breaking loose, and it's absolute pandemonium. And then eventually Deadpool gets the upper hand on Cyclops and he puts a gun to his head. Well, then Cyclops turns around, looks at Deadpool, shoots him with his optic beams. Well, it turns out there's this guy who's been recording the entire event and his camera's running low on battery power. Well, then as his camera eventually dies, the entire conflict stops. And Cyclops is like, what the hell's going on here? Well, it turns out that Norman Osborn had nothing to do with any of this. Instead, Deadpool had basically set it all up. He reasoned with the fact that the X-Men were viewed as criminals in the eyes of the world, and the only way for them to rectify that fact was to be viewed as heroes. And so Deadpool made himself one of the X-Men and then went out, tried to commit an assassination, and then filmed the entire thing on national television so that people could see that the X-Men were actually saving humanity and they were getting rid of rogue villainous mutants. And so in the end, the X-Men were good guys, Deadpool saved the day, yet again, and then he was no longer an X-Man anymore. And that's it. With that being said, we're going to bring this video to an end, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.